One. Okay, good evening, everybody who is watching, whether you're in East Anglia or you're a little further afield, whether you're watching it live or recorded. I'm Bish, I'm a Pokémon TCG judge in the East Anglian region, and we're bringing you today this video on preparing for Birmingham Regionals, which, as you can see from the little banner ticker at the bottom, is the weekend of the 24th to the 25th of January, so in a couple of weeks' time. And this is a live Q&A session, so people have been putting in their questions on social media across the week, but we will cover any of the questions that you have throughout the session. So there's a comments box on YouTube. Please do add any questions that arise spontaneously, and if it works well, I'll kind of interject with those questions. Otherwise, I'll leave them to the very end. But we are joined today by highly regarded and esteemed East Anglian player Tubbs. Tubbs, say hello to everybody.
Hey guys, how we all doing?
Excellent, and thank you so much for joining us today, Tubbs. And can you just give people who don't know you so well a little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, of course. First off, it's my pleasure. I love doing these sorts of things just to grow the Pokemon community. It's something I've been a part of for about 22 years now. And yeah, I've been playing since I was a junior, and I've just never put it down. I've always loved Pokemon, the games, the cards, pretty much everything about Pokemon. My family will tell you I've always been Pokemon mad. And yeah, I've always loved the game, but I stay for the community, and that's why I've been playing this long.
And I think you see that just even in this past week, Tubbs, like, you know, with Lucky's Discord, which I know lots of people will be part of who are watching this, and like just organising those Birmingham prep sessions on live, so the little tournaments, which we had like over 20 people the other night, didn't we? That, you know, that you organised. So you bring so many people in the community together. So thank you so much, Tubbs, for doing this tonight. And just, you know, Tubbs, with 22 years of experience, lots of regionals under your belt. Have you ever counted how many regionals and ICs that you've been to? Those 22 years?
No, I actually haven't. When I first started playing, the tournament structure was very different. So as a junior, I didn't actually play in any big tournaments or anything like that. I just played very, very casually and locally. As a senior, that sort of crept up, and we got, like, I'll speak about it later, but the equivalent of League Cups and challenges and stuff. So I played them locally, and it wasn't until I was like nearly a master that I attended my first regional. So not that many, but probably more than I dare to count.
And you just play in Europe, or have you been to ones further afield?
Yeah, my first American regional was last season when myself and Darren went to Baltimore, and that was awesome. The American regionals are so good.
Well, kind of, that's a nice segue, because my instinctive question was, how do they differ from European regionals? But I know one of our first questions, before I move on to any of the other slides or something, our first question was like the history of regionals in Birmingham. So I know we had Birmingham regionals last year, but before that it was in Liverpool, wasn't it? So kind of what's Birmingham's history with the TCG?
It's a really interesting one, because the NEC is a massive convention centre. So for them to not put it there regularly before is quite a baffling thing to me. But back in 2017, we had the first Birmingham regionals, and that was the first and last one until we had one last year. So it seems to me that their contract with the Liverpool centre had expired, and they were looking for other venues, and the NEC just sort of popped up, because I think Pokemon books them in like 3-year blocks, and that's why London's EYC was the same for like 3 years, and then they renewed it, I believe. So it'll probably be there for another 3 years.
And in between that 2017 to 2025 period last year, was it in Liverpool in those middle years?
Yeah, it was consistently Liverpool. Yeah.
Okay. And that 2017 one, tell us about your history with Birmingham personally, because it's one that's close to your heart, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's it makes like a fantastic story for if I were to make top 8 at last year's Birmingham, because the 2017 one, I actually made my first regional top 8 there. And yeah, so it's a really interesting story, because it's one of those early regionals. I think it was about like 700-800 people, and that was the biggest one of the time. So for me, I made top 8 at the biggest regional of the time. Obviously that pales in comparison to what we have now. But yeah, I've got my stream games they're somewhere on the internet, and I periodically look back and go, oh my god, I misplayed so bad. I'm my own worst critic.
I wonder if somebody who's watching this, maybe when they look at his Discord, will hunt YouTube to find that live stream. Put it in the comments.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because the day one I actually went 7-1-1. Wow. So there was 9 rounds, and I was actually 7-0 at one point, and so I made my first stream appearance in round 6 or 7, and won that one, and then I made my second stream appearance and my first top 8 at that regional. So yeah, it was a really good one for sure.
Fantastic. Oh well, we'll kind of get back into it when we kind of move on to the day or phase 2 bit of it. But I imagine, how did it feel? Was it exhilarating?
It was. It was kind of like overwhelming at one point, because I was like, all right, I'm 7-0. I've never been this, and people were coming up to me and just like, oh my god, are you 7-0? And it's just like people's shock at the time, not because of like me personally, but like, oh my god, like what? And I'll probably get into what I was playing before as well. But yeah, it was kind of a off meta pick as well, which was really cool.
Excellent. Oh, fantastic. We look forward to hearing about it a little bit more as we move through. So let's move on to now. One of the questions that I wanted to start with, and how we're going to set to kind of structure this session, is that we'll look at kind of preparing for the event beforehand. So in this next week and a half, basically, what you can be doing to prepare deck wise and practically. And then we'll look at day 1, and then we'll look at day 2 and everything that goes around that. And then we'll have some time for more questions at the end. But one of the kind of the first questions I want to start to ask you, Tubbs, is somebody asked, and I think it's quite pertinent to a lot of the Shuffle players, because the community at Shuffle in Bury St Edmunds, so shout out to Shuffle, has been growing a lot over the last 12 months, and a lot of the players that are now going to League Cups further afield. So there's quite a few of us at the Zartu Cup in Norwich. Big up Zartu, because that's where you play most regularly. Tubbs. But also like they're going around a bit further afield, like Cambridge and Ipswich. And someone asked, how different will a regional be to a League Cup? Now, I think they probably know that obviously player-wise and event-wise it's going to feel very different. But in terms of like that sitting in front of your opponent and sort of what you have to do in terms of like match slips or to record your result, how different or similar is it to the League Cup? What's the step up like?
So I actually really love this sort of question. And it's when people who are like self-proclaimed casual players dip their toe into competitive, and they're like, oh, so when you go to like an event that's called League Challenge or League Cup, they're quite intimidated by the fact of like, oh, you know, this is like, for lack of better word, it's like, oh, this is the big boy leagues. It's like, oh, I shouldn't be playing here. And I think that's like, it's the complete opposite mindset. You should absolutely go for it, because it's no different. Like League Challenges are exactly the same to any local night you will play, except it's during the day. That is the only difference, and you might have to submit a deck list. So from a League Challenge, from a regular league night, that's the difference. So then you've got the step up from League Challenge to League Cup, which is only slightly different, because you may have a top cut. So you'll play your rounds and then you'll have a top cut, and that'll determine like first to fourth rather than resistance, etc. And then if you want to go from Cup to regional, honestly, the only thing is it's big. Everything's bigger. So the hall's bigger. The space you have to play is bigger. The table numbers are massive. Like you go from like table 1 all the way to table 2000 and God knows what. So yeah, I think the only major difference is like if your store does match slips, which they should be doing, you'll sign them, tick off your games, etc., and you'll give them to the judge, or you'll take them up to the front desk or whatever. With regionals, you'll have what's called the hive. So that is basically a big desk, like usually smack bang in the middle of the hall, with like 12 judges, and you just hand it to them and they'll submit the result. So it's just everything you're used to on a larger scale, essentially.
And I can't tell you where that hive is at Birmingham, because I didn't actually.
Yeah.
Game.
But that's it. Like when they plan the hall itself, they'll give you like a map, and it won't necessarily be in the same place.
That's great. And I think I've found, I don't know if you found this, and it's probably because I'm a distinctly below average player, but I found League Cups in many ways just as like actually more grueling than the regionals. And we'll kind of get into this when we look at day one, but I found there's a lot of time in between rounds at regionals. Whether especially if you win quickly, or in my case, lose quickly. And like I've actually found that time to reset in between sort of quite unique to the regionals, whereas at League Cups it can you can be the last game playing in the round and you go straight into the next round with like maybe not even time to go to the loo, whereas I found that a little bit different at regionals. So in some ways I always say to people at Shuffle it might be in some ways less grueling than a League Cup, but I suppose that's kind of dependent also on how your matches go, how many of them go to time, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking from my own personal experience, I'm a really rapid player, and it's one of the things I'm trying to learn is to actually slow down when I play. It might come across as quite intimidating, but it's because my brain is moving like 10 miles an hour faster than my hands are. So I'm trying to keep up with what I'm doing. So I finish rounds pretty quickly. I don't think there's many a time that I can remember where I actually tied a game. So I've got a lot of time to just walk around. Like in a League Cup, you go walk around the store, you hang out with your mates, and you might order lunch in or something. But yeah, you're right. With regionals, you've got that time between, and you'll have like a big clock. Like every sort of few hundred tables, you'll have a clock going, so you can see how long's left on the round. And so that gives you time to like go to the loo, have a drink, have something to eat, and yeah, just mentally reset really. So yeah, for me personally, there's no real difference in that because I finished so quickly anyway. But someone who plays a little bit slower might gain that respite, like you say.
Excellent. Okay, well, in terms of preparing, and so many questions that are going on in my head right now, but I'll kind of try and remember them and put them into a natural bit based off what you said. So kind of before the event, we're a week and a half to go now. When these questions were asked, it was a few, maybe a week or so ago, and at Shuffle, we had a challenge on Saturday, and it looks like, from what I could see, because the one event this season I haven't judged because I couldn't make it, but it seems like people are beginning to move towards a certain deck. But just in general, Tubbs, in terms of preparing your deck, kind of first question we had was, how should you decide which deck to play? Should it be one where you're looking at the meta and you're trying to make a meta call? Should it be one that you're most comfortable with? Is it the one that you'll just have most fun with because you're playing so many rounds in the day? What do you tend to decide in terms of deck to play, or what would you just suggest to somebody who's a first timer to a regional in terms of what deck they should play?
Oh, now this is another question I absolutely love because I'm constantly debating this with my friends as well. And shout out to Drake, I'm actually having this conversation with this evening, so I'll get back at him later on. But yeah, so when deciding with a deck, I think Limitless is such a great tool that we have that we didn't have like 5 years ago. And so you can see like most performing decks, most performing deck lists specifically, or most performing techs in decks and stuff like that. So I think as a newer player, I probably wouldn't delve too much into that. I would say find a deck that you enjoy playing, because if you're playing all 9 rounds, it's a long day. And if you're playing a deck that you find bricks, or you find a deck like you're not enjoying playing, it's going to be a longer day for you than it is someone who enjoys playing what they're playing. So I think choosing the deck is going to be the harder bit if you haven't set any expectations for yourself. So for example, if your goal is just to make day 2, you would want something that's so the big 3 decks are like Dragapult, Guardian, Goldengo, for example, in this specific scenario. If you can have a 50-50 into one, an auto win into another, and an auto loss to the other, you're going to be fine. Because you can try and metagame regionals, and I can promise you it does not work. I played Charizard to Lil, and I played over the 14 rounds of day 1 and day 2, I didn't see a single Goldengo, which I was really hoping to play against because obviously it's a very good matchup. So you can never kind of predict what you're going to play against. You can Goldengo was like the second most played deck as well, so I kind of got really unlucky.
Yeah,
but that goes to show, like you can't pick a deck based on what you're expecting to see, because it's always going to make you fall flat on your face, unfortunately.
I remember so many times on the Lookie's Pokemon podcast, which I'll definitely rep, even though it's you leaving quite in between pods, I definitely encourage people to just go back and listen, because it's a fantastic listen. And there's multiple times where yourself and Michael and Drake and Harrison said, I played this deck expecting to see this matchup, and I didn't see it at all, even though it had such a high meta. So no, I don't. I when I was at EUIC, I didn't see a single Dragapult, even though it was like one of the biggest.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the sort of thing that happens, really. And obviously yourself playing an off meta deck, that's how people will like sit down opposite you. It's like, oh my god, what is this?
And would you say it's more important to play a deck that you're familiar with, like the strategy and the lines with, rather than picking up a deck where you're not as familiar with, but it seems like a better meta call?
I think that it's quite a nuanced question, because it depends on what deck you're enjoying specifically. Something like Alakazam is actually pretty well positioned right now. So if you enjoy playing Alakazam, I say absolutely go for it. I think it's absolutely fine to play. If you're playing something that's like, I don't know, Mega Venusaur, I think you're probably better off choosing something that's a little bit more on meta. But it all depends, right? If you're playing Mega Venusaur and you play into, I don't know what Venusaur's good matchup is, but if you play into that all day, you're going to be fine, right? But then you're not necessarily going to win the tournament, because once you hit day 2, you'll hit the better players, and then they'll know how to beat you. So I think picking a deck with what you enjoy, but also bear in mind like what your expectations are. If you just want to make day 2, you can even pick up something like Goldengo yourself, because it's fairly... I've had this discussion with some friends the other day, is like, how skill-based is it? And I think we came to the conclusion there's a certain level of like base skill that comes with it, but it's also a fairly non-thinky deck in the way that you just like get the energy back attack, as long as you can do your 5 times table. So yeah, I think recommending something to a newer player, I would say play Goldengo or Raging Bolt or something along those lines, because if you're playing a deck that's fairly easier to play, your first 9 rounds are going to be so much easier. So yeah, I think the question is fairly nuanced, and I like to take it on a case-by-case basis if I can. With this question, I can't, because we're not talking about one specific person here. But I think like if your deck shows up if you go onto Limitless and search decks, there's like a list of decks, and they go all the way from like 1 appearance in day 2. I think if your deck's on there, you're fine.
And I suppose leading on from that then, Tubbs, into that second question there, how should I prepare for different matchups? I mean,
yeah,
and I suppose kind of bleeds into the third question about the most effective way to practice, because we've got a week and a half going, and I know a lot of people's instinctive response will be, I'll just go on live and practice X amount of hours every night. But in terms of like effective way to practice, what would you suggest in terms of, especially if you're limited for time, say you've got very limited time, couple of evenings a week, or maybe a couple, an hour or so each evening, what would you suggest in terms of the best way to practice?
Yeah, it's a toughie. I think as long as you're playing the game, there can't be any like really bad testing, but I think there are better ways to do so. So for example, for myself, I have a lot of free time right now. So I'm grinding on live. I'm doing focus testing with my friends, which includes basically what we call running the gauntlet, which is you play your deck and you sit there and you play best of 3s into every other deck in the meta, and you record the result. So for example, I'm playing Absol Kangaskhan. I have been playing that for the last sort of 3-4 months. And yeah, I've run the gauntlet a few times now. I've played loads of live tournaments, like you say, that I've set up. But I think if you're lacking for time, let's say you can do a couple of hours a week, I think focused testing in real life is going to be much more beneficial to you, because if you have someone that you're playing against and you can go, oh, I'm not quite sure whether I should do Iono this turn or whether I should do Boss this turn, and you can kind of talk through why you would want to do those sorts of things and what the best outcome could be. And I think if you can get stuff like that down in those specific scenarios where you're not quite running on autopilot and you've got to think a little bit, if you've had some practice into doing that, you're going to be better off in a regional scenario. Playing live is fine. I tend to find that I switch off. I'm literally clicking buttons and go, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. And for me, that's the worst way to do it, but it is way to just grind games essentially. So it's good if you know your deck and you know your matchups and you just want to play more games. I think that's fine. But let's say a couple of hours a week, I would definitely say try and do some focused testing. Whereas like, okay, I want to specifically find out what my Gold Dingo matchup is like, what I should be doing, how my board should look, what I should be doing throughout the game. I think that's more beneficial to what you're going to want to do in a regional scenario. Obviously, like we said before, you're not guaranteed to hit those sort of things, but if you're doing it with every deck, then you should be fairly well covered.
And I think about this because from a teaching background, would you suggest, situational practice in terms of, say, for example, you're with a deck, say you've been considering between 2 or 3 decks, and you just want to practice your opening hand, your opening first, or for a couple of turns. Would you suggest just practicing that, so like not walking through the entire game, but just doing specific scenarios in the game that you want to improve at?
Yeah, I think that's kind of hard, because if you're setting up a specific scenario, there's a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that it's not going to happen in that specific way with those exact cards in the discard pile in your hand, in their discard pile and stuff. So I think if you can do it, that's great, but I think it's very hard to pull off in a scenario like that. Test handing is also fine, but I think it doesn't give you any sort of indication. Say if you've got a dead hand, right, and you've started a basic, you're like, right, my deck needs more consistency, but that doesn't also include your opponent might Iono that turn. Yeah, so I think, you don't get that sort of, you get that quick knowledge, but it also doesn't give you the correct knowledge, if that makes sense.
Okay. So to summarize, sort of live testing's fine, but what's even better is if you can get a group of people together and just practice against different matchups with I imagine a willing participant that's pretty happy to play the other. I imagine then you do the same in turn for them. Yeah,
I think any testing is good testing. I don't want to put anyone off saying, oh, I'm just playing live. I think if you're doing any amount of practicing, that is still good. That's still fine. With our testing, sometimes it'll be just like me, Harrison, and Keith, and 2 of us will play it, and then the third person will go, okay, why did you do this? Is there another way you could do this better? And we just sort of discuss as a 3 that what could be the best potential way, and we could like keep grinding the games until we get it right.
Okay, you do that mid-game, so you might like pause the game and be like, actually, and you discuss what you could do in that scenario.
Yeah, so specifically, we did this last week. Keith was playing into me. He was playing Dragapult, and I was playing Absol. And I was playing my game plan like usual, and he was kind of debating between 2 things. And Harrison was like, right, if you do this, this is going to happen. And if you do this, this is going to happen, without any sort of knowledge of my hand. And he played it out how he was going to, and it reacted exactly the way Harrison said. But the second option would have been the better option, with like blind, no knowledge of my hand. So yeah, you can dive way deeper doing it that way than you can without anyone sort of to have a conversation with.
And in that, I suppose you can do it, if it's just you playing with the other person. But a third person's having an odd number is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, because they can ask you those questions, so they can see.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. So I hope you found that really helpful. I'm massively sure you will have done in kind of preparing for this next week and a half. I suppose I haven't put it on there. It's something that's come up in my brain. At what stage next week should people lock in their deck? And I suppose this bleeds into that next question on the event preparation section, because we'll kind of cover Arcanine and deck list. But at what stage would you say lock in your deck list on this day? Would it be right up until Friday evening, or would you recommend a bit earlier, like lock in and then just then the stress taken out of it?
I personally, I'd have said yesterday. I think the end of this week is absolutely fine. I think you want that week to be like, right, this is what I'm doing. If you want to make any like 1 card last minute changes, then that's absolutely fine as well. But you want to have sort of your 59 cards locked in by this point.
Okay, and what about that 60th card? Could that be left right up until you submit your deck list, or would you still suggest, with a couple of days to go, that you should have this full 60 set in your head?
I think if you're flip-flopping between like 2 or 3 cards, I think doing testing the evening before, I think, is absolutely fine with a few people's input. But that's the sort of thing where you go, oh, I should have played this. Like, I think the more time you leave it, the more confident you're going to be in your own choice. And the later you leave it, the more you're going to be like, you could potentially go on tilt, which is basically like a bad mindset if you choose the wrong card, and that can affect your tournament gameplay throughout the day.
Okay. And I don't know how you feel about this, Tubbs. So someone mentioned this at Shuffle the other week, but in terms of, say you're a player and you're doing challenges and cups, and you're doing fine, and this is your first regional, and you're going to just, obviously, and we'll look at what the success look like in a little bit, but you'd be happy if you come away with a couple of round wins. Would you? Someone said, I think it was one of the well-known players said that for most people they're not good enough to tech like specific cards in terms of like that 60th card to tech for a matchup, and I think the person was trying to infer that you should go for consistency. So would you suggest for maybe less experienced players that they go consistency over tech, or do you think that's nonsense?
Yeah, not at all. I think that's the complete wrong mindset. I don't think you should ever self-limit yourself to say that I'm not good enough to do this. I've heard a couple of people say, "Oh, I can't play a Noctowl deck." I'm just like, why? Just learn. Like, I think you should never, especially in life, right? Not just Pokemon. I don't think you should ever limit yourself based on these beliefs. And I think if you think the tech card swings a matchup for you, I say absolutely go for it.
Okay, excellent. Well, hopefully that's, if you're sitting there and you haven't locked in like the deck choice, Tubbs' advice is you should yesterday. So I think today's the day that you commit to it, but also I hope, I imagine you found that massively helpful, and I hope that's those people watching, you're beginning to really get confident with the deck you're going to choose. So let's lead that into the admin that you need to complete. And in terms of deck lists, would be, I mentioned Arcanine, so the admin beforehand, people have obviously got the ticket, hopefully they've booked their hotel or their accommodation. Not here to be parents, but instead of like Arcanine and deck lists and other admin that they might need to complete before 8 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, so with regards to hotels, something I tell everyone to do is when the regionals get announced, just book a hotel on pay on the day, free cancellation. Even if you don't go, you've not lost anything, but if you do go, you've then gained a really cheap hotel. So always do that. Even if it's like American regionals and you're not planning on going, but there could be a potential that you go, I just say, just book the hotels, all free cancellation, pay on the day, it doesn't matter. It might be a little bit more expensive, but then you get the flexibility of doing that. So that's the hotel covered. With regards to deck lists, yes, it's submitting on Arcanine. I think you've got until 5 a.m. of the day.
Yeah,
I think it used to be 7:30 a.m. and then at one point it was like 7:30 p.m. the day before or something. I think it's about 5 a.m. now. That's pretty much it. That's all you have to do.
And that
as long as you've got a ticket, obviously.
And that deck list has to be on Arcanine, doesn't it? And
yes, yeah.
I suppose, and that's one of the differences between League Cups is most League Cups will allow you to do paper form, won't they? But it has to be on Arcanine.
Yeah, so actually our RTO and Judge Alex Pike has created an online submission system for our cups, and it is game changing. It's so cool.
Was that the Google form?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That was helpful.
It's so easy.
Printers, do they? So that is useful.
I do want to say with cups and stuff, you don't actually have to have a printed deck list. You can write it on any form of paper as long as it's legible.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Arcanine, something I noticed, because I've got a couple of foreign language cards in the deck that I've played in regionals and EUIC. I've noticed you have that ability to change the language of the card. So usually, like on Limitless, for example, I know it's not official deck list submitted, but on Limitless, I haven't been able to find, I've got a French Dragapult Lansori NEX, but I haven't been able to find that on Limitless, so I've just got to like denote that, and I know it's not a problem, but I've noticed on Arcanine you can change the language, can't you? And then you can select the foreign language version of the card.
You can, yeah. So Arcanine is specifically a regionals and above level software, so they have to have these sorts of things in place.
Okay. And I suppose something that I've talked to a couple of players at Shuffle about before that have done theirs, because sometimes people do their deck list through Arcanine, even for League Cups, and then just print it off. But I've noticed it's like an image of the card. You just got to be careful about the regulation marks to say something's been printed in Obsidian Flames, but then reprinted in Paldean Fates, you need to be careful that you're selecting the right card, even if they're functionally the same.
Yeah, I think that's a big one, especially for people playing Dragapult, because the Dreepies are exactly identical, and there's one from Twilight and one from Prismatic, and same with like Dustclops and those sort of things. So be very, very careful. When you select the card, it'll say the set number under it. So just make sure it is that one. So if you've got 3 of one and 1 of another, make sure you're selecting specifically those. Be really, am I allowed to say anal? Be really anal about it.
After the watershed.
Yeah.
Great. And then in terms of, I said we weren't going to be parents, but I think this is so important, the practical side, and I'll have my own opinions on this as well. But what do you tend to pack, or what would you suggest? So obviously you need your deck and your deck and a box to put it in, I guess. But in terms of everything else, what should you pack for the day itself?
Okay, so deck box. If you're playing with any sort of deck box that has extra room or dividers, you cannot have any other cards in there because you will be penalized for it. So you can only have like dice and spare sleeves and stuff like that. So if you're playing, especially with a double deck box, you can't have any other cards in there because they will assume you're side decking, which is obviously illegal in Pokemon. So first off, check your deck box, make sure it's completely empty apart from your deck and maybe spare sleeves or something. Dice bag, you're going to want to place your own like damage counters and such. Playmat, something to play on. You might get the regional playmat. Sometimes they don't come out to like round 3 though, so you might be a bit off if you don't bring your own one. Big one for me is snacks and water. If you're not hydrating and you're not eating throughout the day, you are going to fail. You are not going to make day 2. You're not going to have a good day. And there's a specific scenario from this. A mate of ours called Andrew, he doesn't play anymore, and we always stay like a Premier Inn, so we always get the breakfast, scoff as much as we can before we go, and that should last us till about round 4. He never used to drink anything, never used to eat anything, and he would always drop by round 4 because he couldn't take it. He had such a bad headache, he couldn't focus, he couldn't play, he couldn't do anything. So if you're not packing snacks, water is essential. Like I don't care who you are, you are packing water, you're packing drinks. If you're not packing snacks, that's kind of okay because you can buy stuff like there's usually venue food, but it's usually pretty expensive. So yeah, definitely pack your deck box, dice bag, playmat, water, snacks, and honestly that's pretty much it. You don't really need much else for the day. Maybe a jumper if you get cold.
Yeah, and I'm definitely food driven, but I think that's really important to have an example of somebody who didn't prepare, because there's no natural ventilation, is there, in the NEC?
No.
In a fresh, airless environment. And I suppose it depends what hall it is, whether it's in the same hall as last year. But I think there was a water dispenser outside the hall, so it was quite easy to get to. But there was always about 8 or 9 person queue. So if you were worrying that if you were tight for time, so yeah, I think I bought at least 2 big water bottles with me, and then another thing of juice. I didn't have time in between rounds. Well, a nifty thing to the NEC, I remember getting there and I always need the loo in between rounds. Like I need to go to the loo, and they had the capacity in the hall we were in last year to extend the toileting facilities. But there tended to be still a decently big queue. So that would be my advice if you're somebody that needs a loo in between rounds. Absolutely. But I suppose this is going into round the day 1 bit here, but definitely kind of getting that queue early just to avoid disappointment. I also, something that my friend Chris had for EUIC that I've found really, really useful, and this will go into day 1, but if you've got like a mobile charging pack that, so if you run out of battery, you charge it yourself. So when my mum asked me what I wanted for this Christmas, I was like, absolutely. Mobile charging pack, or whatever they're called, power pack. So
nice.
Excellent. Okay, we had a question also about static seating. Now, to my shame, I don't know a huge amount of this. I know about it on like a challenge and cut basis and know how to get that sorted on Tom. But in terms of regional level, is that something you need to apply for beforehand?
Yeah, so you need to give them a good couple of weeks to get it sorted. So on RK9, when you book your ticket, it'll tell you who the tournament organizer is, and you can actually send them an email. So, funnily enough, for Birmingham last year, I submitted a static seating request for my friend Darren, just as a joke, just because he's getting pretty old. So I got him a static. He said it was the best time of his life. He had the absolute whale of a time not having to find his seat. But yeah, all I did was just email them and just say, look, you don't have to go in any detail, but I need to request static seating for this person and their player number. You give it to them, and then a judge will come find them on the morning.
And that means they're just at the same table all day long, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's actually super helpful, isn't it? In terms of when we get to day
one,
your tables and stuff. That is brilliant. That's a game changer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get to day one, then, and it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on this as an experienced and successful player, and then like my experiences on this sort of on the other side of it. But in terms of like your headset, and obviously you buy your ticket and you're hoping that you're going to become a Pokemon master and win the event. But obviously only one person can do that, and the other couple of thousand people aren't going to win it. So what would you suggest in terms of people measuring their expectations and coming away feeling like they've had a successful experience? What would success look like, or how should people set their expectations or their hopes for a regional?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I mean, that's fairly nuanced in the fact like success differs person to person, right? So I guess like my first experience as a master playing what was nationals back then, which is like kind of regionals equivalent or EYC equivalent, was kind of just like win a round, and I did just that. So yeah, I think depending on your skill level, how long not necessarily how long you've been playing, but how long you've been testing the deck you're playing, you can absolutely aim for day or phase 2, whatever it's called now. So that would be 6 wins, I think. So 6-2-1, I think, is when it's 9 rounds if it's that big. If not, it's 5 wins, 2 losses, and a tie. So I think 5 wins is an absolute fine goal to set. In terms of like measuring your own success, only you can do that. I can't sit here and say like you're only successful if you win at least 3 rounds. I think that's a completely wrong mindset to have, especially if you're a new player. I think success should be measured by how much you enjoyed the day, personally.
I think to that end also, and again, it depends on your personality type, but before an event, whether it's a League Cup, regional, IC, I tend to try and gather my thoughts. I write down what my targets are or my goals. So, EUIC EUIC, for example, I'd sort of have the kind of rounds I'd be happy with in terms of winning, but the other goals will be like I went with my friend Chris. I'd be like, have a great time with Chris. When I went to Birmingham with Andrew from Shuffle, I was like, have a great time with Andrew from Shuffle, have a great experience. I remember my first regional, special event, Utrecht. It was to win a round and to survive the day in terms of like not. Especially I had some like minor health issues at the time. So I was like, I just want to see out the 8 or 9 rounds and not have to drop early or feel like I want to drop. So when I came out with 1-7-1 record, I was like, oh, well, I've got one more match point than I hoped for. I did win a round and I made it all the way through the day. So I could, even though there was a part of me that was, I would have liked to have made day 2 or done even better. I could look at my goals I set beforehand and be like, well, actually, I met all of those. I had a great time. You did as well as I wanted to. So if that's your kind of personality, I definitely suggest writing something down beforehand, because then you can like refer back to that, irrespective of how you're feeling on the day.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fine. I mean, journaling is great for all aspects of life, regardless of just competitive or doing anything really. So yeah, I think if you're one of them people that needs to set a goal, I'd say absolutely go for it, write it down, just try and stick to it. Don't try and waver from, I lost the first 7 rounds, I'm not going to win one, sort of thing. So but if you don't need to have a goal, don't set one. Just go in with the intention to enjoy playing the game you love to play.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we always need to remember that, don't we? That, for the 99% of us, it's not our job. So actually, it's our hobby and enjoy your hobby. Don't don't hate your hobby, because that's
And there are times. I mean, I've been a victim of it before. Like when you have negative things, or your opponent top decks the absolute nuts and wins the game because of it, and it's like, oh, that's really really frustrating and demoralizing. But that is part of the game, unfortunately. So it could happen to you. You could be the one top decking for game. So at the end of the day, there is a level of variance to it, and you have to kind of like keep your head level to carry on. And I think what frustrates me the most about the game is when I lose and I don't make day 2, it means I'm not playing more Pokemon. And that's the most frustrating bit. Not because like, oh, now I can't win the event. It's because I want to play more games. I want to play more Pokemon. And I love regionals for the fact it's like there's such a buzz in the air and I just want to keep going.
And that hence shows you that you're still enjoying your hobby. If you come out at the end of that day and like, I wish I could play more Pokemon, that's a good indicator, isn't it? That you've had a good time and you wanna do more.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always been times like on the Sunday where like, right, this is what happened with my deck. I'm ready to build a new deck. Let's play some more games. Let's test for the next regional. So we're just constantly playing games. Sometimes I'll need a couple of days break when I get home and I'm like, oh my God, you get the regional blues and you're like, oh, now I'm really sad because all my friends aren't here. And then you just get back on your horse and then you carry on. And it's, as long as you're wanting to keep playing games, I think you're in the correct spot and correct mindset.
Excellent. Well, let's move on to day 1 itself, and then we'll go through 2 slides on this. One with lots of practical questions, and then the next one about actual, like, performance and playing side. So, what time, Tubbs, should people aim to arrive at the NEC?
So, leading up to it, you should get an email saying like the order of events, and I think round 1 usually starts about 8:30. If you don't get in for early check-in on the Friday, it means you're going to have to pick up your badge to get into the event. So there's usually a big queue for that. If you join the queue about 7:30, you're going to be sort of lucky to get in on time, I'd say. So we usually try and arrive about 7:15, which is actually insanely early, but it does, like, it's a long day. So you kind of need to be there early. So if I would always recommend getting early access if you can. So I think it's usually between 4 and 7 p.m. the day before regionals. They'll do like early check-in where you can go in, get your badge. It's not as busy. And then you can sort of rock up like 7:45, 8 o'clock on the day, and you should be fine because you can walk straight in. If you don't do that, I definitely recommend getting in as early as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think Andrew and I got there probably about 7:15 last year from memory, and we actually did get you quite quickly. But I definitely wouldn't want to like say to people, "Oh, it's fine," chill out about it.
Exactly.
You're definitely right there. And on that note, I mean, the real blessing of it being in the NEC, depending on how you're actually, like, whether you stayed in a hotel right by it, or like last year we arrived by train, but there are in the NEC, that's like the Birmingham International Station is inside like the NEC, or the NEC is International. So they had, your Costas and your Starbucks. I'm not doing any product placement here, by the way, but they've got all your all your like places you can get breakfast. So if you're not a morning person, there's lots of places you can pick up something very quickly on the way in, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then before we went on air, we were chatting about this. How many rounds can people expect there to be?
So it's an interesting one. It depends purely on the amount of people, but also at the TO's discretion. So I think with the tournament structure, it used to be you'd play 9 rounds day 1 or phase 1, and then 4 or 5 rounds, phase 2 or day 2, depending on the amount of people. Now it could be potentially 8 rounds at the first phase 1, and then the 9th and final round could be the first round of phase 2, and then you'll play like 4 or 5 rounds in actual phase 2. So the tournament organizer will always announce these things over the tannoy. So it's always really important that you get that sort of knowledge as early as possible. They will try and give you like plenty of notice to do so, and they will also remind you as and when it happens. So if you're in contention to get into day 2 or phase 2, I'm going to say day 2 because it's much easier. If you're in contention to make day 2, I would definitely just make sure with judges and stuff that that's what's going to happen. So I think regardless, you're looking at 9 rounds if you're in contention. If you're not, it's always going to be 8 rounds.
I definitely encourage you to ask judges and double check with things, because I found that the tannoy system at EUIC fine, but I found Birmingham last year it was quite hard in certain places of the venue to hear the tannoy. So definitely make use of the judges and the event staff that are around there.
Yeah, so Sando Wojcik, who's like a well-known control player, he actually missed his first round of phase 2 because he didn't hear the tannoy announcement.
Wow, gosh. And there's
so, yeah,
literally just missed it.
Yeah, he just went home.
Did he then still get to play the remaining rounds in day 2?
Yeah, it just meant he received a loss.
Okay. Well, I suppose we could skip to that question, the bottom question, actually, because it's quite nice there. What do you do if your opponent doesn't show?
You celebrate. That's what you do. Basically, when your opponent no shows, the round will start and you immediately call a judge. You put your hand up, say, "Judge, my opponent's not here." They will come over, and on your little match slip thing, they'll write a 5 and a 10, and then they'll circle them. So after 5 minutes, you will win game 1. And after 10 minutes, if they still haven't shown, you will win the round, no matter what. If they show after 5 minutes, you will receive a game 1 win, and then you just play as normal. And they will receive some sort of late penalty, which basically means they have to win. They can't tie. So they would have to beat you in 2 games, otherwise you win anyway. So don't be late to your round, because you get penalised pretty heavily for it. If your opponent doesn't show, like I say, just put your hand up, call a judge, and they'll sort it out for you.
And if you're one of those people, and I definitely got this feeling at EUIC, and we can talk about this in a moment in terms of your pairings and things like that, because you get your pairings on Arcanine, don't you? So you've got to have by reception. So I suppose this is an ad hoc question, but something that Chris did ask actually in the comments. I've got to put it in. So you get your pairings on Arcanine. And you just got to keep refreshing, don't you? And I mean, they do put a note on the tannoy when the pairings are there, but I think it's all, you see most people keep refreshing when they think it's around time. If Wi-Fi just drops out, or you've got 3,000 people competing for the same internet, can you go to the Hive and ask them, what's my route? Who am I up against?
You can't go to the Hive, but you can ask a judge. So judges will always have their phones on them as well, and they'll have like a judge Wi-Fi. So you can ask them. You can always ask people around you as well, because they can just go search on page and then find your name.
Okay. And would you get, if you had to go to a judge and most people started playing, do you get special dispensation for that? Or is it just kind of hard luck you were late for your round, even if there wasn't that much you could do about it?
So you still get the 5 minutes. So if you arrive before the 5-minute timer, you'll just play as normal. That's fine.
So find a judge as soon as possible if you think your foe is not going to.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of how do I record my results? So you mentioned that earlier, Tubbs, didn't you? In terms of a match slip that will come around a bit like in a League Cup, like just after you start playing, and the winner then goes and takes it up to the Hive. That's the usual etiquette, isn't it?
That's right. Yep.
And then I see on our comment section, which is lovely seeing lots of people putting comments in and stuff, and I think people are really enjoying the content. So thank you so much, guys, for interacting. And I think it's Andrew here said, bring a pen, which is always useful, isn't it?
Yeah. So when regionals just came back after COVID, so sort of 2022, 2021, they used to give you like a big box. And you might see them because some stores like to store their bulk in. It's like a long white box, and you get your playmat in it. You'd get like the voucher for the side events, and you'd also get a pen. So everybody got a pen. It was fantastic. But now they don't do it.
I tell you what, like with all the stuff you bring, I've always found, like, I love the playmat that you get and all that, but like, I always found the water bottle is like the best part of the kit, because I can actually use that every day. And I suppose the pen even more so. Like you can then go and use that pen like for every day of the year. Whereas a playmat,
so the water bottles are fantastic. They're actually a new addition within the last couple of years, which I think are really cool. With the pens, I actually have all of my pens from regionals, and I've been using them for like work and stuff. So you're right; it's just everyday stuff.
Great, and that obviously, I imagine, invites conversations when people see your pen and like, oh, okay, well, where have you been?
Yeah, there was one year, because it was in Liverpool and it was in January, sort of like where Birmingham is now, and it was so cold. They gave away beanies, like tournament center beanies.
Right.
And I've still got mine somewhere in the car. So.
As much as I love my cap from EUIC, my wife still doesn't let me wear it out in public, which is
Oh no.
no. So yeah, the bottles and pens definitely be more practical. We had a great question to us beforehand. One of the questions we had was, how can I find out how other people are doing and where they're playing? And the heart this question was asked in is, you go in there and you've got maybe husband and child, or wife and child, and one's playing in juniors, one's playing in masters. How do I keep tabs on where both of those players are? Or you just got two friends, like you finish your round early. You said, Tubbs, you play quite quickly, so you're prone to finishing around quickly, and you've got two friends, you want to know where they are, you want to in the vicinity. How can I most efficiently find out that information?
So there's actually two ways you can do that. The first off is actually on Arcanine itself. When you go onto like your dashboard, it also say pairings, and it will bring up the whole list of pairings, like for masters and juniors, and it'll tell you which round it is. So it'll be like, if it's round 4, you can go back to round 3 and round 2 and see who they're against and stuff like that. So that's certainly a way to do it. And if you're looking for multiple people, that's probably the quickest way to do it. There is also Pokestats.live, I think it is, but it's definitely Pokestats. And that is like a website that was generated by the community, and it basically scrapes the data from Arcanine and it puts it into like a neat little list into like countries and who's playing and stuff. And it'll sort it by match record. So if you're 6-0, you'll be at the top. If you're not so good, you'll be at the bottom. So either of those two ways is absolutely fine.
And does that do table numbers as well, or is that just the match?
Yes, it'll give you, so Arcanine will give you table numbers, but Pokestats won't.
Okay, and I suppose the Arcanine, you just use whatever browser you're using on your phone. They're like find and page function, and you just type in the name of the person you want to find, and hopefully it will scooch down to it.
Yep, that's exactly it. I think so. Michael Brown, there was 2 Michael Browns at the last regional, so we were actually looking at the wrong record. So that's something to bear in mind as well.
The record.
Say again, sorry?
Was it better or worse than Michael's actual record?
I don't actually know at the time.
Okay, so that's the practical questions about Birmingham. But if you've got any extra ones, please do put it in the chat box. We're going to move on to the playing side now. And this is one that I actually added in because I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think, Tubbs, you alluded to it as well. Say you come in and you're hoping to do well, whatever your goals are. If you set yourself a goal, or even if you haven't, you're hoping to do well. And say like you've lost the first couple of rounds, you've maybe lost a matchup that should have been your auto win, you just had some bad luck, you bricked, something like that. In between rounds, how would you suggest people keep themselves mentally healthy? Whether that be like, did you have a support of a friend or a person, almost like kind of doing a bit of coaching there in between to help you remember your game plan? Is it just like doing whatever works for you in terms of what you would do in everyday life when disappointments hit? Like, what do you tend to do in between rounds when things aren't going so well?
Yeah, and that's a great question, mainly because it's how you deal with it during like your own life as well. Like, how do you deal with disappointment and such on a day-to-day basis? But also it's a unique scenario where luck has now played a factor. And I think that just stings that little bit more to be sort of screwed over by luck. But when we play regionals, I usually go with like a good group of friends, and we'll select a banner at the start of the day. It's like, right, we're all going to meet at the Metagross banner after every round. So we'll crowd around there and we'll discuss how it went. And, I'll say, my opponent top deck boss after I own it to 1 or whatever. And they'll go, that sounds awful. And just like, you console each other a little bit. But now it's like, right, now we need to lock back in and it's done. Like, you can't change anything about it. So it is just absolutely done. If you've misplayed and you've lost the game to a misplay, carry that forward with you, because then you won't make the same mistake for the rest of the day. So I think acknowledge what went wrong, if anything went wrong in a loss. Take it with you, but if it's like luck, it's done. But if it's a misplay, that's something you can learn from. You can't learn from just losing to luck, essentially, unless there was something in the game you could have done better like 3 or 4 turns ago that would have prevented that. But yeah, I think just learning from it, take it with you, but don't dwell on it.
And I think from like a junior and senior perspective, definitely juniors, I suppose like as a parent, that's your role as well with your child, to try and like rationalize things, encourage them. But also I think, depending on what deck you're playing, you might play a deck where there's a certain strategy that you use for most matchups, or a setup that you're trying to get to, whether that's like in Dragapult, like set up a couple of Dracloaks by a couple of turns in if possible. And I think, because I often, even with decks that I play that are straightforward, in like the heat of the moment and in between rounds, whether it's a challenge or a cup, I sometimes like lose sight of what I should be doing, and I'm too reactive in the game. So I suppose, thinking from a junior perspective, it could work for masters as well. Like, remind your son or daughter or whoever you're with, like, what you're doing with the deck, what your ideal setup is if you can get there, just to like help reset from round 3 into round 4, rather than like them just carrying that disappointment with them and then letting it like mark or ruin the rest of their day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I really love this game, because when you're playing as a child going into like your early teens and then later teens and then adulthood, it's very much character building. So it's like, when you play this game, it's kind of how resilient can you be sometimes. I remember it was nationals at the time. My first nationals as a master, I went 1 win and 7 losses, and my 1 win was to my auto loss. So it just goes to show that like anything can happen. And I think, like you say, just be consoling. I think going to a regional by yourself probably isn't the best idea, especially if it's your first one. Definitely make sure you've got a good group of people around you. And like you say, if it's your son or daughter, whoever, just encourage them that, sometimes it just is like that, unfortunately. And that's then a life lesson you can teach them. And that makes you a better parent. And then your husband or wife, whoever, might love you even more for it. So it all goes around both ways.
And actually, that leads me on to something else, because I've been thinking about this. Like, we've been talking about hopefully hosting one of those Sycamore symposiums as judges, and I've been thinking about, like, I'd want to do one because of my teaching background on, like, judging juniors and seniors. And I've always thought that, actually, like, losing, like, everyone finds losing like not nice. Like, even if you handle losing really well, like, it's still not a nice feeling. And I think we expect our juniors and seniors to be able to handle it as well as adults do. And I think just adults probably have more coping mechanisms. So in terms of like regionals, you can remember where you haven't performed as well as you'd hope to, or maybe that you've dropped early. Like, if you decide, what, I've got 6 rounds in and I'm not having fun anymore and I want to drop, what do you suggest people go and do for the rest of that day? Is it just do whatever makes you feel good? Is it go and have a good old, nice meal at a restaurant, near the NEC? Like, what would you suggest people go and do?
Yeah, it all depends what you like to do, really. I mean, with regionals and stuff, the side events are amazing. There are a lot of things you can do for the rest of the tournament, not by being in the tournament. So that's interesting. If you want to keep playing Pokemon, but not necessarily in the tournament itself, that's a great option to do. I remember one EIC is the only EIC that was ever held in Germany. And on the flight over there, I had a really bad toothache. I was like, oh no, please not this weekend. And it got to me at round 1. I was in absolute agony. I misplayed a lot. I wasn't focused. And then I had a really bad judge call. I think it was round 3. And that was why I say about the double deck box, because it had other cards in it. And they were trying to penalize me for that, even though they weren't like remotely similar or anything. So that's why I always say don't have anything else in there. But yeah, after that, I was just done. I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. My tooth's killing me. I'm having a bad day. I'm not winning any games. I can't focus. So I just took myself away and I went back to the hotel and I had like a 3-hour nap. I was like, right, okay, I'm okay now. I'm fine. I've sort of sorted myself out. Went back to the tournament and I stayed to watch my friends play and cheer them on and like be their support, because when I play in a tournament, it's not just for me, it's for everyone. And that's what I like to do, especially if they're playing in day 2. Make sure you're like in the building playing side events or playing games or something, so they can come to you and like de-stress and you can help them out and stuff. So I think going for a nice meal is great in the evening, because you can all like lick your wounds or whatever, or you can all celebrate. And it's a place where if you're eating a really nice hot meal with your friends, I find that personally very comforting anyway, just outside of Pokemon. But yeah, it's a place where you can sort of vent. It's a place where you can celebrate, and it's just, as long as you're there with your friends, it sounds really really cheesy, but that is just how it is, unfortunately. So yeah, I think just support each other and realize if you're going with a group of friends, it's not just you.
Yeah, and I think I definitely encourage that. Like the first special event I went by myself. Like my wife and my daughter came with me to the Netherlands, but I went to the event myself. I definitely had just a much better time all round when I went with Andrew and I went with Chris to EUIC. And then like that's what's so lovely about the Look East group that we've got. Is that you notice people that you've played with against in challenges, in cups, and then you just want to know how they're doing, and you chat, and it's just that lovely atmosphere that then takes you outside of your own head, doesn't it? And actually then you're actually probably in a better place anyway, even if you does a general chat with somebody, to then go to the next round and do overcome any disappointment.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with Look East as well is every regionals, like, we get a good group to, I try and get like a really big group photo. And it's kind of a reminder, not just to me, but for everyone, that you're not alone in this. Yeah. And it's like, these are the people that you're playing with at your local league, or you'll see at a challenge or a cup. And like, they're almost your rival in a sense, where it's like, oh, I can never beat this guy, but I'm going to do better at him, the regionals, or, anything like that. Like, there's always something you can take away from it being a big group like that. And something I was going to say with like the decks section we did earlier is you can always post in the Discord and ask questions, because people are always going to be there to help you.
Absolutely. And I think that's something then, I imagine, Tubbs, at Birmingham, you're going to do another big Look East photo at some point during the week?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll try and get everyone together before round one starts. So if you're in the building early, just prepare for a photo.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay, then they're kind of looking, say, obviously at the beginning of the tournament, I imagine the announcers will announce how many match points are needed to progress to phase day 2. So just remind us, Tubbs, although most of us will know this from League Cups, but how many points a win worth, how many points tie worth, and then kind of roughly per, like if it was 8 rounds, how many points are usually needed to progress to the second phase or the second day?
Yeah, so every win you get is worth 3 points. Losses are worth 0 points, and ties are worth 1 point each. So we're going into phase 2. If there's 8 rounds, you'll need 16 points. And if there's 9 rounds, that will be 19 points.
Okay. And that kind of then leads into... I will go into the question there, and then Andrew's just asked a good question in the chat. In terms of points then, when should I look to ID, especially if you're a player that's your first regional or first time where IDing seems like it might be necessary, but you've never done it before regularly at cups? So what does ID stand for anyway, Tubbs? And then when would you look to consider asking for an ID?
Okay, so ID stands for intentional draw. It's sort of that morally grey area in the rule book where you can offer your opponent the draw instead of playing the game. It's actually been updated in the rule book that you can only ask your opponent once. It's been like that for a while, but you can only ask your opponent once. So, for example, if it was me and you playing, I'd say, would you like to ID? You have to go yes or no. If you say no, that's absolutely fine. I can't ask you again, but you can still ask me. So if that comes across like you kind of go, oh, game 1 wasn't so good, I'll offer it again, and then it's up to me to say yes or no. If we both said no, we can't offer it again. When you're looking to ID, it's basically like IDing is a safety net, essentially. So let's say there's 8 rounds and you're looking to get into phase 2, which requires you to have 16 points. I think you shouldn't be even considering the ID until you get to 5 wins, which is 15 points. So if you're at 5-0, you've got 5 wins, 0 losses, 0 ties, you're at 15 points, you can then offer the opponent the ID. You can say, look, we can tie this game. We're both guaranteed day 2, no matter what happens here, and then play the rest of our games later on. You'll find that if you are 5-0, your opponent will probably decline it, mainly because if you're at 5-0, you can afford to take a loss. So it's actually better to play more games and to try and increase your wins now to try and increase your standing for then top 8 in phase 2. But if it's your first regional, it's absolutely fine to offer it and just say, look, I want to make sure I just secure day 2. So I think It's definitely an interesting one, and especially if you get to the final round of the day and you go, right, I need a tie here to guarantee I get like top 256 points. So that might not necessarily be day 2, but if you're looking for like a points threshold or a finish threshold, or that's your sort of aim, you're obviously more than welcome to offer that. And I think you'll get like 18 packs or something like that. So there's an element of like prizes to be won there as well. I think if you're looking to ID at any point, I would seek counsel from more experienced players and just go through it with them and what they think. So I have a lot of people come up to me and go, oh, do you think I should ID here? Should I wait till next round? Should I do this, that, and the other? And I will try and help the best I can. And people who have been in that scenario will give you like a better rundown than you might necessarily know at the time.
And how would I know that I could ID into top 256 or something? Is there a way that I can be sure, or is it still up in the air?
There's a way to. So on Limitless, they have there's a drop-down menu. It has tools, and there's like I can't remember what it's called now, but it's some sort of calculator where you can put in the number of people and the current tie rate. So that the current tie rate is how many people have already tied. You can put that in, and it will tell you how many points are needed for like a specific finish. But that's obviously like there's some sort of human error there because you can never predict exactly what the tie rate is. So there's always a chance you bubble as well. But when you ID, that is the risk you take.
And if I'm right to say, so you 5-0, you and your opponent ID, where the moment you're guaranteed to go into day 2 or phase 2, I imagine then the remaining games of phase 1, you then play out to try and maximize your points going into the second phase. You wouldn't just ID for the rest of the day, I imagine.
No, once you've ID'd and you've guaranteed it, you always want to play, because then if you get into a record of 7-0-1 into day 2, you're in a much better position to actually make top 8 and continue on in the tournament than you are. For example, if you go like 5-2 and it's the last round, you can ID to guarantee it, but you'll be at like the bottom tier of day 2. So it's going to be really hard to make top 8 from there. So I always say try and increase your standing where you can, but it all depends on your goals and stuff. So now in my position, I've ID'd at 5-2, gone in at 5-2-1, and I've had a pretty middling finish. So personally, I wouldn't ID anymore. I would like to win that game and try and push myself into a top 8 because that's my goal. But yeah, it all depends on what you want to do, what sort of finish you're looking for. But you can always ID to get that extra point to boost you up a little bit.
But you're at the stage there where now that you'd risk not getting into day 2 because actually you'd rather go into day 2 stronger than day 2 limping in. Am I right?
Yeah, so I actually did this at Birmingham because I had actually run out of water and run out of snacks. So I was getting to the point where it's like, right, I'm really hungry. I've got a headache. My opponent sat down and offered the ID, and I did contemplate it for a bit. But I was like, am I going to throw away more games of Pokemon just because I've got a headache and stuff now? And I was like, okay, I'll just take the ID. And he was playing Control, which would have been a headache to play, but my deck had a really good matchup against. So I was kind of kicking myself. And then because of that, I then got into like what I call the funky zone. So you go into day 2 at 5-2-1. It's not necessarily the most meta decks you see at the first round of that. So if you're in that bottom rung, you could see something that your deck has a complete auto loss to, which has like a 0.5% of the room. So that's also another risk you run. So there's a lot to think about. I think if you're a newer player, don't worry about the ID unless you're guaranteed to make whatever finish you're aiming for. Just play the games. It's not worth it.
Another reminder to pack enough snacks in your bag, or not to, have them all early and stuff, so you can have a clear head when you go into it to that last round.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very important. Just before we move on to phase 2 and day 2 then, good question in the chat. Advice on scooping. So you say, Tubbs, that you tend to finish your games quite quickly. I imagine scooping when you think you're not going to win or it's unlikely to win is a massive part of finishing your round.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Scooping in itself is such a massive skill. And that's something that you need to practice quite often. And I would say like playing more challenges and cups will get you there rather than like testing, because you don't want to scoop in testing, because that's when you sort of go, right, how do I get out of this specific scenario? If you've done enough of the specific testing I mentioned before, you can kind of like identify that, okay, this is completely unwinnable, and that's when you can scoop. There are other ways you can do it. I mean, there was one time where I was playing a deck that really loved to go second, and I won the coin flip, went second in game one, won game one, but it was quite a long game one, so I immediately scooped game two because I knew I'd be chosen to go first. So that gave me enough time to then play game three and then win the set. So
wow,
it's a huge skill to be able to do, because there are definitely games where you can still win. And I think a lot of people tend to scoop too early if they're not well versed in it. I think it's a skill in which you have to know your deck very well, and you have to know the matchups very well. And it depends. Like if you're a little bit of a slower player, I would definitely recommend like looking at the clock quite often. And if you go like, right, game one took half an hour and I won, should I scoop game two a couple of turns in if I'm not drawing that well? Probably yes, because you're going to need another half an hour to complete game three. So I think it's not really any advice I can give specifically. I would say just practice it and make sure you know your deck and matchups, because if there's no way out of the matchup, you should definitely be scooping.
And in terms of like it looks unlikely. So let's say you've lost the first game and you're going into a second game and it's unlikely you're going to win that one. Would you suggest scooping in that one and lose the round to make sure you reset, you have enough time before the next round? Or would you say absolutely play that game out because you never know, something unexpected might happen and you might win that game and go to game three?
Yeah, I mean, if you're down a game, you should definitely be playing it out, because there are always chances your opponent misplays, your opponent's bricks, whatever. If you're in game three and there's like 10 minutes left, you're dead drawing, there's a potential where you can scoop because you want to get a drink or you want to go to the loo or something, but there's also a chance that you can get a tie. So that's like an extra point. So yeah, it's very case by case scenario. I actually played against someone on one of our Lookies tournaments. In the Dragapult matchup, my aim is to get rid of all their energy, so Dragapult can't attack. I bossed up the Dusclops, got rid of all their energy, and had Psyduck on the bench. So the Chiro had already gone. There was absolutely no way that Dusclops was getting out the active, but they still continued to play, and this was game one. So that's a scenario where you should be looking as like, right, I can't do anything, let's go to game two. But instead, they wasted about 15 minutes just still playing the game. So that's a great example of like knowing when to scoop, because like what you actually are hoping to achieve at that point.
That's great. And that's why I like how this all links to earlier questions, that if you've tested thoroughly with your deck, you'll identify those situations where you know from your experience testing, even though the card's going to be slightly different, you can never replicate, but where it's going to be difficult to get out of that situation and then just to scoop. Another one that kind of relevant for day one and day two, Joe asked in the chat, how do you challenge slow play? So, for example, in a challenging cup scenario, the judges are very visible, very nearby. You probably know the judge. You might even know the player, so you can, have a, quick word and say, well, hurry up. But with a complete stranger, and the judges obviously are visible, but there are thousands of players and only so many judges. How would you go about challenging slow play at a regional at Birmingham?
Yeah, so that's a great question as well. I think how I go about it is my opponent's slow playing. It's 15 seconds in action, so you've also got to be very careful on the flip side that you're not badgering them, because you can get penalized for that as well. If they're taking like 5 seconds to make a thing and you're going make a play, they can call a judge on you. So I think like you have to be very careful that you're calling it correctly as well, and you're not just like badgering your opponent to do something because you're playing quickly. So for me, I have to wait like 15, 20 seconds just to make sure, because like I say, I play quite quickly. So that's something to be aware of. If you're trying to challenge it and you know that they've taken like a minute to do anything, you can just say, please make an action. And they go, okay, yeah, no worries. And if they do it again, you've got two choices at that point. You've already warned them once. You're more than welcome to put your hand up and call a judge, which is what I do. If you're feeling a little bit nice, you can say, please make an action, or I'm going to call a judge. So don't ever feel intimidated to do so, but just make sure that you are in the right before you do so.
And I had this situation like on me in Birmingham last year where I won game one, and I wasn't intentionally playing slow by any means, but I'm not the fastest player in the world. And my opponent said, "Do you mind speeding up a little bit? So if I do win this game, we get a game three." And I was mortified. I was not aware that I was playing slowly. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I did not mean to." But like off comment, for I imagine 90% of people, if not more, are going to play the game and they don't want to annoy or upset their opponent. So I always encourage people, like, do mention it. Obviously, you might have to consider how you phrase it to your opponent, especially if English isn't their native language. But don't be afraid to say it to your opponent, because 90% of people are nice and will probably be mortified. Also, they could be play slow.
I think like the way, because me and Pike talk about this as judges and TOs quite often, and I'm very passionate about slow play. To put it lightly, we say like you should call a judge because yes, they're taking a while on their actions, but it's also like you've got to make sure it's fair for you. So in the rule book, it should be like each player should have the same length of time in the game, and if they're slow playing, they're actually taking away the time for you to play the game. So don't feel like you're calling them because they're being slow. It's because they're taking away your time as well. So that's a way to look at it if you're feeling quite nervous to do it. You've got to be careful as well that they're not just playing slowly. So some people like do actions slowly, where the slow play is just like they're not doing anything for 15, 20 seconds.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Tubbs. I hope that gives people confidence as well that they are well within their right to challenge it. So say you made phase or day two. We've kind of alluded to it quite a few times. When is phase two likely to begin?
So phase two will start, I think it's 8:30 again, but if it's any earlier or any different, they will always let you know.
Okay. Excellent. And that will be really clear then, whether, if you made the cut, because you said that example of that quite famous player that missed their first round of phase two, but that should be quite clear that you've made the cut and that round will happen, and you'll know that from the beginning of the day.
Yeah, so that'll be on the Tannoy announcement. That'll also be on the email you receive as a player package, and it will be on that little mini map timetable thing you get in your goodie bag.
Okay. And why have they done that, Tubbs? Why have they brought that in to the end of day one, that phase two can begin then? Is it just a kind of tournament perspective of trying to get day two done a little bit swifter, or are there other reasons behind it?
Yeah, so back in the day when it used to be like capacity, so it'd be 9 rounds day one and 5 rounds day two, there would be a lot of times where the event would actually overrun the center's opening times, and TPCI can incur a fine for doing that. So that's something they've had to be more aware of, especially with the new time rules as well, where it's like 10 minutes for +1 turn. It was even worse before, when it was like +3 turns, because people were taking like half an hour to do their 3 turns. So it's definitely a money saving thing by them, just to make sure the tournament doesn't overrun, I would say, more than anything.
And that reminds me, actually, I've always been struck by how much time there is between rounds, because you think there's always going to be, statistically, always going to be somebody else who's going to finish their game after you, even if your game goes to time. But I suppose with the new time rules, did you notice that, was it Lille you went to, that things are a bit shorter in between rounds because of the 10 minutes, or did it feel like there was still a fair amount of time in between?
Yeah, there was still a lot of time in between, and it wasn't just that people were taking the full 10 minutes. It's also the fact of like judges do mid-round deck checks because they don't have any other time to do deck checks throughout the day. So if you finish your game and a judge comes up to you and is like, "We're going to check your deck," don't panic. It's just a random deck check, and you'll get that time awarded back to you. So that's also why it overruns as well, because if they're doing deck checks at different times, they'll try and like compact them all together, but it can be like sort of 20 minutes, half an hour over time.
And then I'm glad we've got back to it, because you've mentioned about day two in at Birmingham last year, and then your run at in 2017. What's day two like from a playing perspective in terms of everything? Like, is there the room, the hall, will that be less busy than day one? Because a lot of people like myself last year decided to not show up for day two and just go home, because didn't make day 2 and then want to stay around for the side events. And then also from like the playing experience, can you noticeably tell there's an increased skill level as you approach day 2? Like what's it feel like?
It's such an odd feeling, because if your goal is to make day 2, you're kind of feeling like super relaxed because you've made it. Like this is exactly what you wanted, and now there's anything else is just extra. So there's an element to feeling relaxed when you make day 2, but that's also the point where you shouldn't be relaxed. You should be focusing. So it's definitely interesting as well, because recently where they introduced the 16-point threshold to go through to day 2 if there's 8 rounds, there's a lot of people, there's a lot more people that play day 2 now, whereas before it used to be around 5% to 10% of the whole tournament would go and play in day 2. So 2,000 people, there'll be 200 people in day 2. Now there's sort of like 15%, so there's like a lot more people playing. So yes, there's a chance that you're going to see skilled players, but there's also a chance you saw people that, you know, if they're playing Alakazam and they saw 8 Goldengo and they've just swifted their way through because the matchup is so easy. So, yeah, I don't really know how to describe it, to be honest. I definitely feel more relaxed, but I'm still like on top of my game when I play. But I know a lot of people sort of like go off a little bit, especially because there's some people who've gone out and they've like celebrated the night before and they've got like a stomachache because they had too much food or something like that. So you get a whole mix of people, but everyone seems to be like generally more relaxed.
Okay. And can you tweak your deck between days or not? You stick with the same deck list?
Say again, sorry?
Can you tweak your deck between day 1 and day 2? I imagine you can't, especially because phase.
Oh, no, absolutely not. No.
All right. So
when you play a regional, you have to play the same deck all the way through.
Okay. So at least it's not that kind of headache the night before that, should I tech for this in day 2? Like
no, yeah.
And then I suppose I should ask you also, Tubbs, you've been on stream, haven't you? What's that like?
Oh, I love playing on stream. Stream is so much fun. It's really nerve-wracking to start with, because if you kind of like look over to your left or right, depending on where you're sitting, you'll see like a crowd of people watching you. Like, oh my god! But when you put the headset on and it's just full of static. Now, a lot of people don't like that. I personally find it a lot easier to concentrate when it's going on in my ear, because it's just static, so you can't hear the casters.
White noise.
Yeah, white noise. Sorry, and yeah, I find I get really in the zone by playing it, but I know a lot of people get stressed when they're up there.
How do you find out you're on stream? Does it say it on the Arcanine pairings that your table is a stream table, or does someone come up to you and say, "You like"? I don't even know how they find you. How do you find out?
So the casters will choose. Let's say it's me and you, and they'll come up to our table. They'll find the table number in Arcanine, and a judge will come up on to the table and put a white slip down which says stream game. So you arrive at your table, you see that, you're like, oh, okay. The judge will be waiting for you, and they'll take you backstage, and they'll prep you for going on stream.
Oh, that is cool. It's like you're on some kind of talk show or something.
It's so cool.
And not to orchestrate this necessarily, but is it if you've got like branded apparel that they have to give you a Play Pokemon shirt to put over it? Is that right?
Yeah, any sort of brand or anything that's like Pokemon but not official merch, they'll just give you a t-shirt to stick over the top.
So would you recommend, in terms of like, we should have done this a little bit earlier on the preparing side, should you purposefully wear a branded top just in case you get on stream?
Yes, absolutely, because you get to keep the t-shirt after. So
you've got yours.
I've got mine. Yeah.
Excellent. How often do you wear it, or is it something like you just kind of like you just want to preserve?
So when I first went on stream, I wasn't wearing any sort of official merch. So I was just on there, so I didn't get that. But when I got on the stream, when was I on stream? I think it was a German regional last season. And they gave me it was our Caledon, yeah. And I was given a plain black t-shirt because they run out of like Pokemon ones in my size. Oh. So yeah, I was really gutted, but it means it's another work shirt I can use, so I always wear it to work.
Okay, then at least you know that it was from that event.
Exactly. Yeah.
And something should we kind of briefly touched on before I go to that last question there, in terms of the event kit. So you said it's like usually some point towards middle of the day. I think last year it was like round 4 or something. You could pick it up, something like that. So
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And something that Robert, shout out to Robert from Ipswich, but also plays at Shuffle. I think if you make the certain cut, say top, what was it, 256, you said that you packs, you have to collect those packs by the end of the event, right? They can't actually send them out to you, so you need to be quite astute and go to the prize wall and get your prize. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So just before you leave, if you know that you've got packs, it's quite hard to know if you've got packs, but you can ask other people who have like made the same result, or you can ask the judges, do I get prizes for this or whatever, and they'll be able to tell you. But yeah, go to the prize wall, you'll go up to them and say, hi, I placed here at the event, and you'll just have to show some ID, and then they'll give you your packs and you can go.
Oh, well, I do hope some of the guys watching that will be you, especially if it's one of your first timers, so that'll be an immense feeling. Okay, so a big thing, and I know there's something that people really, really love about regionals. So you already mentioned it very briefly. If I haven't made day 2, so statistically that's going to be the majority of people, how do I sign up for side events, and what side events would you recommend? What's kind of your favorite that they usually offer?
I don't tend to do regional side events, but I do tend to do international side events if I'm not in day 2. So there's a lot of side events you can do, and there's like a specific place. It's kind of next to the prize wall where you sign up, and there's like a little slip of paper, and you put a cross in a box of which side event you want to do, and then they've got a card machine, and you can just pay at the counter. So they do. It's interesting. They don't do the same ones every time. So they might even put it in the email that we get out sort of end of this week, start of next week. Sometimes they do GLC. They'll always do like pick a packs, which is a pod of 4 people. You'll all get a pack, and you play a game with the contents of the pack, and like you can't lose by decking out or stuff like that. So it's a really interesting and quick game. And then at the end you'll get prize tickets, I think they're called. So they come in tickets of 10, and for each win you'll get 10 tickets, and then like I think at the prize wall 40 tickets is a pack. So you can like in a group of 4 you can play loads and loads of picker packs, get loads and loads of tickets, and then just swamp them and get loads of prizes. So that's a quick and efficient way of doing that if you've got a lot of time and you want to get a load of prizes. Sometimes they run a cup, sometimes they run like expanded or other random things like GLC, like I said. So yeah, it's worth just looking and seeing what they've got. But otherwise, people tend to just jam some games, or if you're really lucky and you've got a friend group that has a cube, definitely play cube.
I know, I hear so many people, including yourself, advocate for cube. Can you explain to those people who haven't played cube what cubing is?
So cubing is one of my personal favorite ways to play the game. Our cube is a 500, no, it's not, it's a 480 card cube. And you shuffle this massive deck up and you divide it all into piles of 10. And they're what we call quote unquote packs. So you would take a pack, you would take a card, and then you draft it. So that means you pass the pack to the person to your left or right, depending on which way you're going. And then you'll get a new pack and you take a card. You pass it along, you take a card and pass it along, and you do that until you've got a fully functioning 60 card deck, which you can edit to put energies in and stuff like that. And it's just a really fun way to play the game because you're not playing the same deck every single time. And it's kind of like a skill-based thing where, you can kind of remember the contents of the pack. And when it comes back around again, because it'll go around like 1.5 times, I think, when it comes back around again, you go, this card's now missing. So like, person number 3 might be collecting grass types or something like that. So it's a really interesting way, and it's really hard to describe. If you haven't watched it, I definitely recommend Omnipoke's cubing video, where Joe talks about like in depth how to play cube and what it's like. But if you can play it, don't ever turn it down.
And is it standard format?
No. So our cube is singleton, which basically means it's there's no card copied twice, and except for stuff like rare candy, and that's anywhere from base set to current set.
Oh, brilliant. Base set. So I suppose in that kind of preparation, if you and the people you're going with know you want to do that on day 2, if you don't make day 2, you just got to come prepared with the cards you want for the cube.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Let's go to this final question before we take any just further questions. And there are a couple posted during the day on social media that I'm going to go through on our final slide. But lots of people from Shuffle, and I imagine elsewhere around the East Anglian region, have signed up for Birmingham. And then a couple of weeks later, or a few weeks later, EUIC. So I've been to both, you've been to both. What would you say the differences are in terms of an event level, on a playing level, on the admin level? Like, how big are the differences, would you say?
The tournament itself is pretty similar. I mean, aside from the number of people, the things you do, like with the match slips and getting them to the hive and the judge calls and stuff, all of that is exactly the same as a regional. They tend to have like people on, when I say people, they have people on site from TPCI. So they go around with clipboards at big international events, and they might ask you questions and ask for feedback and stuff, which I think is really cool. They put a lot more production value into the internationals because there's obviously only like 3 of them. And I personally find that they go really hard on the side events. So a lot of the times they'll have like Nintendo 64s and like gaming stations from PASS in one area. There'll be like a coloring section in another area, and there'll be like side events in another area. And one year, when was this? I think it was 2 years ago now, EYC. They had like a scavenger hunt, and me, Burridge, Drake, and Michael did the scavenger hunt. And it's basically like, go color in a drawing, go have a photo with friends, go play this game on the Nintendo 64, and a couple of other things that we had to do. And you got like a prize at the end of it. And I think that was just really cool.
That sounds great. So it's kind of like a regional, but bigger in every way in terms of like probably player counts a bit bigger, but then the side events just like very, very cool and enjoyable.
Yeah, I'd say it's more like a regional plus a convention.
And I suppose the great thing is, even if you day 2 at EUIC, there's a 3rd day, isn't there, which is the final, the finals day. So I suppose you're guaranteed a day where you can go and do side events and stuff. Whereas at regionals, if you do make day 2, you're probably writing off your opportunity to play side events. Would I be right in saying?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the 3rd day as well. If you haven't made the finals, I can't speak from experience, but it's great to watch the finals on the big screen because you're surrounded by everyone who's watching this one game, and you can kind of feel the buzz and the electricity of the people who love the game. And like, if a good player's made, you're like, oh, that's really good, or the prizes. And there's so much of an atmosphere when you're watching the finals together with a big room of people. But yeah, it's just so good. And with internationals, you don't have to play the event at all. It's worth going just to go in there because obviously you've got the Pokémon Center on the side as well.
Yeah, and I think that's some kind of the feedback from guys at Shuffle who haven't played at EUIC but have visited before, that they loved it. And now now I don't know whether this was just my own experience, and you'll have a much more accurate perception of this, but I found that like EUIC was the best tournament I did in. I went 4 and 5, which was, for me, I was like over the moon with. And at one point I was 3 and 1 and was like living the life. It felt surreal. I also felt like when I talked to my early round opponents, a lot of them were like, oh yeah, well, I play a little bit of locals, but I do one big event every year and it's always EUIC. And I found like maybe the caliber of player in those early rounds are maybe slightly less than I found when I went to Utrecht and I went to Birmingham, because a lot of people were making it like their one event of the year, and they were kind of slightly less competitive players. That's just the impression I got, but I don't know whether that is just pure luck. So kind of in terms of skill level, would you say it's very similar to regionals, or do you think there's a little bit of truth in what I've suspected there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're completely right as well, but I don't think that's just an international thing. I think regionals in like the UK and specifically Germany and stuff as well, they have a lot of players that don't really play a lot. So when there's a regional or an international in their home country, they go because it's just a day out and an event that they can't usually do. So, yeah, I'd say that the skill level's fairly the same, but you're not wrong in what you say. The first sort of 3 rounds, this is why I say you can't meta call, because the first 3 rounds, you could hit anything. You could hit absolutely anything. And then if you lose to that, you're then back in the pool for hitting anything again. If you lose, you're back in the pool for hitting anything again. So that's why I said, if we go back to what we said about picking your deck and stuff, it's, you can't meta call, because you could go against little Jimmy, who is its first tournament ever.
And would you say for that reason, actually, anyone who is watching this and obviously cares enough to prepare and to, to do lots of testing, they should go in with a level of confidence into that first or second round? Like any anxieties aside, because obviously it's a big thing and you're playing against a stranger, but they should go in with a level of confidence, because they might be playing against somebody who is not tested anywhere nearly as much as them and is not as committed or as devoted to the game as obviously the people are watching this video.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if they flip over, let's say, I don't know, Toxtricity box, and you go, oh, I've specifically tested against this for some random reason. You're like, right, I feel pretty good. So yeah, I'd say be confident, but also this is something specific to me, and I know Drake has called me out a couple of times on this, where I am completely oblivious to fame, I guess you could say, whereas I have no idea whose people's names are. It took me 3 years to learn who Azul was. And yeah, so when I did the Birmingham run for top 8, I played against a number of really high caliber players and didn't even know. So the UK ones I played against, like Tamao and stuff, I knew how good Tamao was. But I think the takeaway from that is just like, if you're sitting across from Tord Reklev, he's also still human. Yes, he might have tested more against you, but there's also a chance that he can win because it's still a game. That you can win, sorry, because it's still a game. So I think go in every round with as much confidence as you possibly can muster.
Excellent. I think that's a really nice way to end the structured questions. Is that you're watching this, try and as much as you can try and be as confident going into the event. I remember EUIC was the only event I won my first round, and that did me the world of good. That was like, okay, yeah, I can do this, and that was that confidence I need. So definitely go into that first round.
Yeah, first round for sure. Yeah,
even if it's your first event. Okay, well, we're almost at the end, Tubbs. It's been fantastic. And I know so many people have been putting in the chat just how much they've been enjoying this and how valuable they found it. So please do. It's a really good time to add any more questions you want to in the chat. But I'm just going to go to a couple of other random ones that we've had throughout the day. So Tubbs, and I probably should know this as a judge. And I put that in the judges' Discord, didn't I, today? I kind of know it from a...
You did, yeah.
But in terms of judge shuffling, it's such a massive event. Are judges allowed to shuffle for players? And if they are, how would you even go about that? Because obviously there's a finite number of judges and a much larger player count.
Yeah, so same with static seating. If you know it's going to be a problem, I would definitely send an email in beforehand, because they will allot you a judge or someone who can actually shuffle for you. Back in the day, there was a lady called Rita, who I was really good friends with, and she was a really great person in the community. And her sole role was, she watched her son play regionals. He was a very high caliber player. And her sole role was to shuffle for people. So she would be designated shuffler for some people. So it's absolutely fine, but you can't turn up on the day and expect it to happen if you haven't prepped beforehand. So if you know it's going to be a problem, definitely send that email in.
Okay, I'm going to put that on my next judge's application in terms of when they have the list of things that you'd be happy to do. I'm just going to put in the other box, judge deck shuffler.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you might be considered for a slot by doing that than you would any other slot. If they've really got nothing else for you, you can always just be a shuffler. For lack of a better word.
Yeah, no, I definitely need to get better at shuffling. So I don't think they should put me even if I do. Okay, this is a great question, and I suppose, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, and I don't want to offend anybody by saying this, but in terms of languages, like I think when we play at Birmingham, play at EUIC, there is an expectation, not just because it's Pokemon, but in just our British culture, that we expect people to come to Britain and be able to speak English. But I know from like other experience, like going abroad internationally, I wouldn't necessarily be able to go to Lille regionals and speak French. So if you're coming against somebody with who's speaking a different language and maybe not like, let's take Birmingham as an example, not extremely competent in English, how do we navigate that situation in terms of they're playing the legal cards? They can play, you know, say they've got French cards, they're absolutely entitled to play that. But have you had those situations where your opponent and you've had communication issues due to language? Or
Yeah, I mean, I totally get where people are coming from with this question, but I also think it's how do I say this? It's an interesting scenario because it's not like you're ordering a cake from a bakery in another country, right? You're not trying to converse specifically about this one thing you have no idea on. You're all playing a game where you kind of know. Let's take Tatsugiri, for example. Everyone knows what Tatsugiri does. Look at the top 6, get a supporter, shuffle the deck. And the good thing with Pokemon is the artwork. So even if you don't speak their language, you can recognize the artwork and go, oh, that's Tatsugiri. But there's no, the cards just aren't all text. So you can kind of use pattern recognition a little bit to sort of navigate your way through. So when I played in my first Worlds in Anaheim, that was 2017 as well, I played against a couple of Japanese players. And obviously we had no idea how to communicate with each other, but we played the game absolutely fine because we were tapping on our cards, we were gesturing, you know, there was some level of respect that we knew what each other were doing, I guess. If you're really struggling, you can call a judge. They will have translators on hand. If they're playing with like foreign cards, even if you're both English, because I use like French Yveltals, for example, in my deck, so that you can call a judge and say, what does that do? My opponent's told me this, is it correct? And also, if your opponent says something and you don't think it's right, don't just take their word for it. Please just call a judge. That's what they're there for. Yeah. I could say my Yveltal like does 20 damage, you can't retreat and mill the top 20 cards of your deck. And if you don't question it, then I'm going to keep doing it. Obviously, I wouldn't, because that's cheating. But do you know what I mean? That's the sort of severity it could lead to if you let your opponent just do whatever they like.
If Elsal's broken enough, it doesn't need that. No, that's a really, really good question. And I've always found, just on a practical level as well. So when I was at Utrecht, I played against lots of different people from different countries, and I loved it. I had a chance to practice my German as well, which was like probably the highlight.
Great, yeah.
But I had a younger player. He'd only just broken into Masters, and I think he was German, but his level of English, I think he was a bit shy, and also like his level of English was a bit lower. So I just think from an English perspective, as long as like definitely, like as Tubbs said, like just be really clear with your play. And I think we have a tendency in English, and I'm just talking from a teacher perspective, that we fluff up our language quite a lot and like use colloquialisms and little words that's quite distracting for somebody whose English isn't their first language. So if you know that the person across from you, English isn't their first language, or they're not as competent in it, then just try and be as clear as you can, just so that the words you do say, they've got a better chance of understanding what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game we all play, and they kind of know like retreat, attack, draw. Like those are terms that are not just English. That's just like what's it, the blanket words for the game, I guess. And they are the ones in English, but they're the ones like if you're playing against someone who's international, it's chances are they've played a regional before anyway. So they'll have had like some level of experience of communicating with other people. So yeah, I think the cards themselves have the pictures, they have the numbers. It's only like specific text, and most of the time they're going to know what you're doing anyway.
Sure, and enjoy it as well. My favorite games have been against people from different nations. Just like after are usually fantastic, really good. I think we've got one more. about sleeve legality. So this is going to be the same for league challenges and cups as well as regionals and stuff. But in terms of sleeve legality, what sleeves can we use? What sleeves can we not use?
Okay, so sleeves are a big thing. You can use any brand of sleeves, but they cannot be see-through. You cannot see the Pokemon card back through your sleeves. So if you think that you can see even a little bit of like the card showing through your sleeve, do not use them. You will be penalized. Clear sleeves you absolutely cannot use, obviously, because there's been like you can mark the back of them and stuff. So just try and get block color sleeves. You can use official Pokemon sleeves, like the Pokemon Center sleeves, which are gorgeous most of the time. ETB sleeves I really wouldn't recommend, but you can. You can't use anything that's not Pokemon. So, for example, Dragon Shield have artworks with dragons on them. Can't use them. And I'll tell you why. Because there was one time a player turned up to a regional many years ago. Same with their playmat and stuff, and it had very, very close to hentai on them. So that's why Pokemon just went, nope, nothing else, only Pokemon. We can control that. And obviously with the clear sleeves, people have marked cards before. So just try and use block color if you can. That's what I would say.
I suppose Pokemon can guarantee that with their sleeves, which have a border around, don't they? So you can use Dragon Shield sleeves as long as they're like the solid green or solid blue, isn't it? It's just got on them. And Pokemon have that border around the edge, don't they? I imagine it's also because that, you know, if you used anybody's sleeves with artwork on at the, you know, the 60th sleeve could have the ever so slightly different artwork on it. That
absolutely, yeah.
That identify the cards, and that's the same for challenges, cups, and anything that's not regional specific. So just have one last look in the comments box, and a really nice thing to end on. I think it's because questions about this at Shuffle. I think just Steffi puts it as a great judge in the East Anglian region. So thank you so much, Steffi, for watching. And she says, and I think we'll all concur with this, never be scared to ask for a judge. We're there to help you. And I think the word judge like has probably connotations of being judgmental or ruling penalties. And actually, when you do your judges qualification, like it's there to like, yes, we do have to administer penalties sometimes, but it's always after we've tried to reverse the board state as much as we can to try and reset things. And usually it's just to answer questions as well. And then it's just, you know, in those cases where there's been some damage to the board state that we do have to sometimes apply penalties as per the guidelines. But we are a friendly bunch and a lovely bunch. And it's like all areas of life, like no question is too stupid to ask. You know, don't be fearful of asking for judges. Put your hands up, and you may have a judge that you know come over to you. So in my final round at Birmingham last year, put my hand up for a judge call, and lo and behold, it was Pike that came over. Lovely way to end, because Pike was that judge call, and the way Pike handled it was my inspiration to go. When I got on the train after with Andrew, I was like, I think I want to do my judges qualification, because the way Pike
that's so cool
was just so calm and so clear to both of us as players, and made us feel both so secure in the game. So, you know, and there will be, you know, Pike is fantastic, and there'll be so many other fantastic judges at Birmingham and EUIC and whichever regionals you go to. So please just pop your hand up, because no question's too stupid. And yeah, and they're all happy to help. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, I think as well, like, yes, the judges, like, they can come and like judge stuff, but it's also like, if you imagine it, they're judging the balance of the game. So it's like, right, what's happened here? Right, how can I rectify this? And they're trying to get things as level as possible, like watching a pair of scales. And if it's slightly tipped in one side, they will judge it and try and sort of mitigate that and make it level again. So it's not that they're coming to judge you or judge your opponent. They're coming to judge the game state and how can they fix it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and thank you even more so, Tubbs, for your time, because we've been streaming for 2 hours exactly now. So thank you so much for giving up your evening to do this, Tubbs. I know so many people find just not just your comments, but the fact that you've got so much experience to bring so reassuring and comforting. And please, I imagine you'll be very happy, Tubbs, if people come over and say hello to you, want to be part of that Look East group photo on Birmingham. So thank you so much for your time, Tubbs. Are there any kind of parting words you'd like to say?
Not hugely. It's just my absolute pleasure. I love doing stuff like this. Me and Darren started Look East 6-7 years ago now, with the aim of having one local hub, so all the stores can come in and everyone can mingle, and they can. We wanted to stop that divide. We used to have it a few years ago where it's like, oh, you only go to this store and you only go to this store, and we didn't want that. We wanted a hub where everyone could come together. And I love this game so much, and I'm so passionate about it. Some people say I'm a little bit intimidating with how passionate I am about it, so I do apologize sometimes. But yeah, I'm here to make sure everyone has a great time. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone is also. I wanted a place like the Discord where everyone can ask questions, and like you say, there's no questions too stupid. I want everyone to have fun. I like hosting the online tournaments because it gets people involved. It gets people playing. You can play against people you might not necessarily play against. It gets people talking. And it just like, we're here to create friends and create a community, because life can be hard, and Pokemon should be a great escapism from that. And it shouldn't be something that you're fearing playing because of like judge calls or, negativity because your opponent top deck something or something like that. So yeah, please come and say hello. Please, I'm a really nice person. I really love to meet people, and I really love to chat to people. So even if you're struggling or you need someone to talk to, or don't ask me for directions, because I'm awful at directions, but anything else I will help with.
Okay, thank you so much, Tubbs. You're getting some love in the chat as well right now. Thank you, Joe, for your comments. Thank you, Andrew, as well. So thank you so much, Tubbs. It's been a real pleasure tonight, and thank you those for tuning in. And if you're watching this back, not live, and you had a burning question, just pop it in the Look East Facebook group, the Look East Discord if you're part of it, and somebody, whether it's Tubbs or it's somebody else, will answer you as quickly as possible. Like Tubbs said, it's a super friendly, lovely group. And my last parting words would be just have a fantastic time at Birmingham. Whatever your goals are, whatever you're doing, whoever you're going with, just have a cracking time. And do let us know how you get on. So thanks.
Make sure you watch me on the finals screen, because I'll be in the finals. I'm going to be winning Birmingham.
And that, you know what, that would be like the best if we get to day 2 and you see, an East Anglian player, like in that top 8. Like, just I think that
absolutely.
You've helped build, Tubbs, we'll just we'll all be rooting, whether it's you, whether it's somebody else, like we'll just be all rooting for them. And I think that's so lovely that's kind of happened in Norfolk and Suffolk and that wider East Anglian region. So that's cracking. Okay, guys, well yeah, I've really enjoyed doing this. So if you've got any more requests for videos and stuff for myself and Tubbs, I'm sure we'll definitely hold it under consideration. But have a great evening, guys. Or if you've watched this back, have a real good one. And thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks, guys.